Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Ken Rolla. I'm from the Daytona Beach, Florida area, and I'm here to talk about staying healthy in an era of biowarfare, GMOs, and geoengineering. And my background is in electrical engineering, but I've been teaching natural healing for the last 25 years, and my focus has been on solving serious problems, serious health issues, life-threatening disease, that kind of stuff. So I've spent many, many years uh, creating solutions or finding solutions for things like cancer or diabetes or AIDS or autism or Parkinson's disease or whatever. There are no incurable diseases, there's only incurable people. And so because of that focus and also because of my background in engineering and also my interest in quantum physics, when I was working with healing, and also not just physical healing, but also emotional healing, releasing and reprogramming limiting unconscious beliefs or self-destructive unconscious beliefs. So in the course of doing all that with this background, this kind of unusual background in engineering, I saw things in all these modalities and these practices that I've done that other people weren't seeing, or at least I'd say I had a unique perspective on it because of my training. And so, for example, I was in a meditation yesterday with Douglas, and it was really wonderful, but he was just, actually before the meditation, he was describing some of the experiences that he had witnessed with people using these ancient esoteric meditation techniques. And as he's describing it in his terms, I'm thinking in terms of the physics of it. I get this. It's part of this galactic circuitry. So that's part of what I'm going to be talking about today is how all this stuff works so that you can go home and do things in your kitchen and in your yard and in your body and your house to heal things, to protect yourself, to prevent these various threats to our health from even affecting you. And if they do affect you, how to heal them and reverse them. So I'm not going to talk about myself because this is normally a 2 to 3 hour talk, and I've got about an hour and 45 minutes. I don't know if we'll have time for questions. If we don't, you can catch me afterwards in the hallway, and I'll be happy to talk and answer questions. But at any rate, I got started, I got interested in nuclear fallout and what to do about it in 2011, in March 2011, when the Fukushima nuclear disaster occurred, because I had already worked with Chernobyl victims, and I had helped Chernobyl victims heal from radiation damage. I had one lady who was a quadriplegic, one lady who was a paraplegic, and I was able to get them walking and grasping and functioning normally after about a year's time, and they had really severe damage from radiation. And so I knew in studying the Chernobyl incident what was going to be coming from Fukushima, particularly here to California, but really across the entire globe, not just, people think, oh, like on the East Coast, people think, oh, poor California, I'm glad we don't have to deal with that. Wrong. Everybody's getting it, and not just the Northern Hemisphere either. I'm friends with Dr. Patrick Flanagan. For those of you who know him, he's been measuring the fallout in the atmosphere around the globe, and he says it's astronomically high in the upper atmosphere everywhere, including the southern hemisphere, and it's coming down on us in our rain. And particularly here in California, or really anywhere these days, if you're getting rained on, you need to be detoxifying yourself externally because you're getting radiation on it. And you can measure it. You don't have to take my advice on this stuff. I'm going to get into specifics on how you can measure and determine exactly what's going on with you, so you don't have to take anybody's advice or hearsay. But with the fallout coming down, you can take swabs from your car. If you've got a Geiger counter, or you know somebody that does, you can actually take swabs of the rainwater on cars, and you can measure the radioactivity here in California. Okay, I've seen that done. So, at any rate, I work because of my programming and engineering. I like working in the realm of facts and not conjecture and not guessing. So, I'm going to be showing you how you can determine specifically what's going on with yourself and your environment, and then how to resolve any issues. And also, the notes for this talk, they're actually not on this page. They were on this page, but I changed my slides. You can go to downloads.freshandalive.com if you want to download these slides. I've got all these slides available for download. It's downloads with an S, .freshandalive.com. Also, I'll be referencing a lot of information and data in here. And I'm also used to talking to skeptical crowds, let's say, or less enlightened crowds than this. And so I also have a page full of mountains of evidence of what I'm going to be speaking about. So you can actually go and research this in more detail if you want and see the information and evidence of what I'm going to be talking about. That link is radiationlinks.freshandalive.com. Okay? So in the initial part of this presentation, normally I show evidence of the existence, first of all, of geoengineering. Some people call it chemtrailing. And the fact that it's not a conspiracy theory. A lot of people think, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. This crowd probably is pretty aware of this phenomena. But geoengineering, as it's being referred to scientifically and publicly now, is the concept of engineering the weather, modifying the weather, and also protecting, supposedly, the Earth against global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it. And so they're proposing to, and they're not proposing, they're actually doing this, and these geoengineers like Dr. David Keith from Harvard are admitting to dumping 10 to 20 million metric tons of aluminum, barium, and strontium particles in the atmosphere globally every year. So this is not at all a conspiracy theory. This guy has been all over mainstream media. He's been on the Colbert Report. He's been on mainstream TV talking about, you know, oh, we know this is insane, but we've got to do it, because if we don't understand it and figure out how to do this to potentially save ourselves from climate change, global warming, then we might get farther down the road and not have any tools to resolve this. Well, the fact is that our illustrious military and other governments and militaries around the world, they know very well about weather engineering with what Sharon Schloss was talking about earlier, orgone energy. I refer to it as scalar energy. That is very well known. Wilhelm Reich's papers and scientific work were taken by the U.S. military back in the 1960s, so they know very well about this technology. Also, Nikola Tesla and others, and not just Americans, Nikolai Kozyrev in Russia and many other people have understood about this energy and how it can change the weather and modify weather. So they know very well about this, and of course they've developed technologies which I'm going to show for weather modification using scalar energy, or this fast and light subtle energy, which I'm going to be talking about and explaining. So anyway, just to show you that it's not a conspiracy theory, I'm going to go over these slides very quickly because I don't have the usual amount of time that I have. And one of the things that I tire of is going to conferences and events and seeing people pointing out the problems, but they don't point out the solutions. I'm very, very solutions-oriented. I like pointing out the solutions. It's like, does anybody here not know that spraying metals in the atmosphere is a problem? Does anybody, the drought in California, does anybody not know that's a problem? I think everybody knows that's the problem. So I'm going to be talking about the solutions, but I'm going to very quickly zoom over some of these slides just to show you the mountains of hard evidence that this is going on. It's not at all a conspiracy theory. So Dr. David Keith, Gordon McKay, professor of applied physics at Harvard, also Time Magazine's 2009 Hero of the Environment Award winner, is proposing that we spray these not just metals but also sulfuric acid up into the atmosphere to stop acid rain. So how does that work? You spray battery acid in the atmosphere to stop acid rain? I don't know. To me that doesn't make sense. But this is what he's proposing. He's kind of like the public voice box for this movement, and these people are not telling the truth. Dr. Keith has a company that makes millions of dollars off of geoengineering, so he's heavily invested in this. He's heavily interested in it succeeding. Now the good news is it's illegal to spray us with these toxins. The National Defense Authorization Act of 1998, Public Law 105/85, stipulates that restrictions on the use of human subjects for testing of chemical or biological agents. Prohibited activities. The Defense Department may not conduct directly or by contract any test or experiment involving the use of a chemical agent or biological agent on a civilian population or any other testing of a chemical agent or biological agent on human subjects. That's the good news. Now, the bad news is there are exceptions. The exceptions are These do not apply to a test or experiment carried out for any of the following purposes. Any peaceful purpose related to a medical, therapeutic, pharmaceutical, agricultural, industrial, or research activity, or any purpose that's directly related to protection against toxic chemicals or biological weapons, or any law enforcement purpose, including any purpose related to riot control. So basically, the government can spray us, but we can't spray ourselves. There's a video you can see on YouTube. It was on the Discovery Channel on television called Declassified Human Experimentation, because a lot of times people will ask, well, why would they spray us? You know, why would our government spray us with these poisons? They know better than this. I just can't believe that our government would spray us. Well, if you look at the very long and illustrious history of experimentation on populations just in the United States, you know, it's been done, it's kind of standard operating procedures, done all the time. It's done on our troops, it's done on civilian populations, it's done in warfare, and it's nothing new. It's been going on for thousands of years. The ancient peoples tried to use bacterial warfare against each other. In 1945, in World War II, the Japanese engineered, not genetically engineered, but they manipulated a strain of the what is it? Well, actually, I've got it here. I'll show it to you. But anyway, they used biological warfare in World War II, or at least attempted to. The United States has done so as well, even as far as the 1800s. The Spanish flu of the 1800s was actually an attempt at biowarfare by our own military, and it backfired on them, and it wound up spreading globally and killed millions of people. If you want to know more facts about this, more information on it, and as Sharon Slosh, for those of you who were in her talk earlier, it's basically, these movies are laying out the scientific evidence and facts and details on this, but they don't offer any solutions, and they're very fear-based. But what in the world are they spraying, and why in the world are they spraying? They're on YouTube, they're free, and like I say, you know, you don't need to necessarily write all this stuff down. I'll tell you if there's something that I'm giving you that's not in these slides or notes, or what I'm in these slides, because you can download these slides in PDF format online. Oh, right. Michael Murphy's going to be here tomorrow night, and this is going to be playing, so I would highly recommend watching that. They really cover quite well the various reasons for this, and there's many reasons. There's economic reasons. For example, did you know that you can now bet on the weather on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange? So you can actually buy weather futures, and you can bet and invest in the weather and against the weather. So the agricultural companies know this, and they're actually investing against their own crops, so that if their crops fail, they actually make more money than if they succeed. That's just one motivation. There's also the motivation of, for example, manipulating the weather in California and causing drought, and also dumping high levels of aluminum in the soil. Aluminum blocks nutrient uptake, and that suppresses organic crops. Fortunately, Monsanto has genetically engineered crops that can resist aluminum and drought. So we've got GMOs just ready to go for us when the organic crops fail. So there's that motivation. There's military applications, there's political agendas. If you can manipulate the weather of a country, you can bring leaders out of power. Or you can blackmail them. You know, for example, in Japan, the Fukushima disaster, when the nuclear disaster in Fukushima occurred, the first thing I thought was, I wonder if, because of my background, I've been a naughty boy, and ever since the early 90s I've worked with free energy technology and all kinds of advanced technologies to help the planet. And so the first thing that came to my mind when that reactor blew was, I wonder if the United States used a scalar energy weapon to create the earthquake that caused the tsunami. So I got online and I Googled scalar energy weapon Fukushima, and the first thing that came up was a video of Benjamin Fulford, who is the editor-in-chief of Forbes China, interviewing the Minister of Finance of Japan. And there on record, on video, was the Minister of Finance of Japan stating publicly that, in fact, the United States had used a scalar weapon to create the earthquake at Fukushima, but they had also done it twice before to blackmail Japan into economic policies against China to keep the Chinese yen from becoming the world's reserve currency. Because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but China and Russia and Brazil and now an alliance of about 140 countries have created an alliance to create an alternative economic system on this planet to the G8 in the United States monetary system, global monetary system. And so the United States desperately doesn't want that to happen, because our dollar is the reserve currency of the world, which is the currency that everybody uses to do business with. So, the United States, for example, if we want to go buy oil from somebody, we just print paper dollars, or really not even that, we just put some numbers in a bank account and we go buy oil. But if Germany or somebody else wants to go buy oil, they've got to convert their currency into dollars and then go buy the oil. So they have to have real assets to go, buy something. And so basically, our our economy is based on a fiat currency that has no backing. And the moment that dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency, we're toast. So the United States government seriously doesn't want that to happen. So they're doing all kinds of things behind the scenes. There's all kinds of battles and squabbles going on and warfare going on with energy weapons and weather modification and all sorts of things to keep that from happening. And so I saw, okay, so the U.S. engineered it. Whether they did or not, ultimately the one fact that I knew was that in a few weeks that radiation was going to be coming to us. And just from looking at the explosion, I could tell that it was going to be a lot worse than Chernobyl, because Chernobyl was not an uncontained reactor breakdown the way that Fukushima was. So anyway, some of the effects of geoengineering. Because they're spraying these heavy metals, particularly aluminum, they alter the pH of the soil by hundreds of times, which blocks plant nutrient absorption, as I mentioned before. And so that suppresses organic plant growth. It suppresses all plant growth, even the wild plants. And fortunately also, by the way, Monsanto has genetically engineered versions of trees and shrubs. And they've stated publicly that they would like to have the entire plant genome of the planet be genetically engineered. So basically their goal is to wipe out all of the plant life on the planet and replace it with genetically engineered versions that we all have to buy from them. Not going to happen, but these insane people want it to. And obviously these metals, the aluminum, barium, and strontium, toxify people, land, food supplies, and water supplies, which weaken immune systems and cause all kinds of health problems. They get into the brain and then the nervous system. They short-circuit their neural pathways, and then you wind up with neuromuscular disorders like multiple sclerosis or muscular dystrophy or Parkinson's disease, et cetera, et cetera. Autism. And so I've helped a lot of people heal those completely by simply removing the heavy metals out of their nervous systems and brains. Now here's an interesting one, and this is very pertinent to California. Aluminum powder is a fire accelerant. It's used in fireworks. It's one of the main ingredients in fireworks that makes them burn. So when you go spraying this all across the landscape and it gets all over the trees and the plants, what happens when there's a drought, or even if there's not a drought and you get a fire? It's going to be way, way worse. And that, in fact, is exactly what's going on. If you talk to firefighters, they'll tell you the fires nowadays are far worse and far faster than they used to be, and it's because these metals are sitting out on these plants. And as I mentioned, aluminum causes brain and nervous system damage. It lodges in the brain and short-circuits brain neural pathways and the nervous system. Now, the fallacy that when they're publicly trying to promote is that, oh, we're doing this to combat global warming or climate change or whatever euphemism you want to use. But in fact, it's been discovered that these metals, because they stay up in the atmosphere so long and they're so light and reflective, that they don't drop to the earth that fast, and so they wind up, although they do reflect the sunlight on the sunny side of the earth and lower the surface temperature of the earth, on the dark side of the planet, that's not facing the sun, it acts as an insulating blanket, and so it doesn't have a net effect of lowering the surface temperature of the earth. And of course, when you put metal particles, fine metal particles, in the atmosphere is an ocean of highly charged particles that need to be in balance in order for us to have normal weather. When you throw all these charged particles of metal up in there, you get severe weather of all kinds. Droughts, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, freezing cold, massive snowstorms, et cetera, et cetera. And so back when all this was going on, when Fukushima first occurred, I'm kind of lazy, so I don't feel like I have any duty to save humanity. I really like saving my own butt. So when I saw this going on, I said, well, I got to find a solution for this because I'm not putting up with this. So I spent about a year and a half working my tail off, and I developed a device that will clear these pollutants, all pollutants, out of the atmosphere for about a 75-mile radius. And it doesn't drop it back down onto the ground, it sends it out into space. And so what I discovered was when you clean the pollution out of the atmosphere, you don't get severe weather because it balances the ionization of the atmosphere. Severe weather like lightning storms or strong winds and tornadoes and hurricanes, that is the Earth trying to clean itself. So the more polluted an area is, the more likely it is to have severe weather. When you clean it out, all that severe weather goes away. And interestingly enough, even when storms come through, for example in Florida where we are now protected by these devices, we haven't had a hurricane since 2005. That's very unusual for Florida. It's because the atmosphere there is clean in most parts. And so if you follow hurricanes and tropical storms and things that come up from the south, usually down from Cuba up to Florida, they just die when they get to Florida. There's a reason for that. So we've seen this all across the world, and it's not just me. There are lots of people putting these kinds of devices out and doing this, and everywhere I've seen this done, the severe weather goes away and you get normal rainfall. We put them in the deserts, and the deserts green up. And Sharon touched on this in her talk earlier, but Wilhelm Reich discovered that, or postulated at least, that deserts all across the world are actually areas of ancient wars or else geopathic stress from certain types of mineral formations underground. And so the frequencies of energy coming out there are what causes desertification. So if you fix that energy frequency with these devices, guess what? The deserts green up. And that's exactly what's going on, for example, in Arizona. Go visit Sedona, and you'll see it's green there now, and they've got plenty of rain. Not too much rain, they've got just enough. So, why would they do that? Well, for one thing, you make money, as I mentioned, on controlling the atmosphere through investments in weather futures. Through the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I don't know if there are other exchanges now that you can do that, but you can bet on the weather and make money if the weather goes sour. And as I mentioned, because these metals suppress conventional crops and wild plants and prevent them from uptaking nutrients, you can sell GMOs and make huge amounts of money selling GMO crops all across the world. Of course, you can also reduce population because these things suppress people's immune systems, they make them sick, and if you combine that with a food supply that is severely lacking in nutrients and a medical system that doesn't really heal people and an insurance industry to fund all of that, you've got a perfect system for reducing population. And of course, I mentioned military and political agendas, and many more. So I'm going to zoom over these slides. This is just evidence of geoengineering in various places that you can go online and see, and you can watch these slides later to check these out online if you want. The American Meteorological Society, they did a paper on indirect and semi-direct aerosol campaigns, the impact on Arctic aerosols on clouds. And you can see there's 16 scientists on this paper, and that's not all of them. There's another 16. So there are 32 scientists involved in this study for the American Meteorological Society. The Council on Foreign Relations, our good buddies at the Council on Foreign Relations who care so deeply about us, they did a workshop, and you can go to their website and see this. This is all public. It's not hidden. It's not behind passwords and logins. A workshop on geoengineering, unilateral planetary scale geoengineering. You think our governments don't know about this? They absolutely know about it, and so do the other governments of the world. This is part of the agenda of the workshop. Science, the world's leading journal of original scientific research, global news and commentary, has lots of articles on geoengineering. Here's one called The Politics of Geoengineering. How to convince people that this is a good thing. Shifting the debate on geoengineering, that's another article on their site. A test for geoengineering, there's tons of this stuff online. Why would you want to shift the debate on geoengineering? because you've got to be able to shift public perception that spraying metals in the atmosphere is like toxic and crazy and insane. It kind of, it's kind of self-evident. It's like, hey, maybe we should spray arsenic in the upper atmosphere all across the globe, and that might help stop global warming. Yeah, well, it might kill everybody before global warming gets to them, but that's another story, right? So this stuff is patently and obviously absurd. And they, David Keith and others admit this in their public talks, and yet they still propose it because they're out to make a lot of money. And there are other agendas, of course. Here's one from the Atmospheric Radiation Measurement Program from the U.S. Department of Energy, indirect and semi-direct aerosol campaigns. This is a really interesting one. This is a 57-page research paper that the Air Force commissioned, and of course they claim that, we just did this, to study this, to study the feasibility of engineering the weather, but we're not going to do it, But it's a 57-page paper, and they lay out very precisely in here what they're doing and why they're doing it, or what they want to do and why they're doing it. But they make no bones about it. It's called Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. And they stipulate they have a goal to own the weather globally by 2025 for warfare purposes and for other purposes. And again, this is public. It's amazing, You just have to know to look for it. Nobody's out there looking for it. I'm looking for it. Because I know, being an engineer and being a geek, if this stuff is really going on, there have to be patents for it, there have to be systems for it, there has to be a lot of evidence, and there is. But nobody's looking for it much. I'm sure Michael Murphy is going to be talking about that paper trail. Here's another one, a conference on climate engineering. Earth Sciences, another journal on geoengineering. Geoengineering Watch, a really phenomenal resource on the details of this stuff. Although, again, they don't offer any solutions, they just point out the problem. That was, by the way, on that page, it's 320 plus patents on geoengineering that they have links to. 320. You can Google the geoengineering, the regulation of geoengineering. This is the UK House of Commons Science and Technology Committee. They have a report presented to them called the Regulation of Geoengineering. And in that report, they note the need to work with the United States Congress. They know about it. Stratospheric injection. Oh, and by the way, on that downloads page, there's like 6 pages of notes with all these links and stuff, so you don't need to write any of this stuff down. You can just go there and download it. It's like 6 pages of all these links that you can go and click on them, and including these search terms I put here. But stratospheric injection of reflective aerosols. Man, if I had a dime for every time that I was sitting around thinking about stratospheric injection of reflective aerosols, I just can't believe I didn't Google it before. Who's going to Google this stuff? We're not, and especially if you're sitting around watching, television and the crazy movies and stuff that people have. I don't watch TV and I don't watch the media. I don't plug into that stuff, and so it's being used for mind control, so I don't plug into that. So I do sit around thinking about this stuff. But I don't worry about it. If you can hold your questions till the end, because I've got a lot of material to cover, and I want to get to the solutions for this stuff. Now here's an interesting one. The Rothschild-owned defense contractor Raytheon does all forecast modeling for the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Lockheed Martin does the modeling for the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. Since both these private defense contractors are up to their necks in weather modification patents and programs, the forecasts are more or less scheduled weather. And there's another one. Rothschild is invested in, they have a 70% interest in Weather Central, the world's leading provider of interactive weather graphics and data services for TV, web, and mobile. So they own the weather. They own the information about the weather. Here's a Nobel Prize 1995 issued to Mario Molina and Paul Crutzen for the ozone layer, the Achilles heel of the biosphere. So yes, people know about this stuff. People are studying this stuff. The United Nations knows about it. They're looking at all this stuff. They're just not telling us. This is a photograph, a satellite picture of the southeastern United States, where I'm at in Florida there. And the skeptics or the obfuscators of the truth will say that, oh, these things are just contrails in the atmosphere. They're not chemtrails or whatever. That's nonsense that, nobody's spraying these metals. It's all nonsense. Well, if that's true, these airlines are going to go out of business really quick with these flight patterns because, that's going to burn up more fuel than Moses knows. It's nonsense. This is obviously a pattern of covering areas with this stuff. And also, because of my background in developing scalar energy devices, and not just orgonite devices, but power generators, I'm familiar with the effects of this stuff and what it does in the atmosphere. And if you guys may not be able to see it very well, but if you look over to the right side of this picture, you can see kind of peppery-looking clouds there. And I'm going to show you more information about this, but those are classic longitudinal scalar wave patterns that you will see with these, they call them microwave antennas, these HARP antennas. They're actually scalar wave antennas. But they combine these metal aerosols in the atmosphere with these devices that can bombard a large area with scalar waves, these fast and light waves we're going to talk about. And when you combine those two, you get these classic longitudinal waveforms in the skies, which you can see and identify. So you'll know when you're being harped, but if you know how to recognize these patterns. So anyway, this is what's going on in this picture. These links to various sources that have been doing scientific testing, particularly the Carnicom Institute has been doing testing of humans and biological specimens, plant and animal, showing these different, not just these metals, but also genetically engineered microbes that are being sprayed. They'll take desiccated human blood cells, which are dried human blood cells, and they'll inject them with GMO biowarfare agents and then spray them on a population. I started seeing this stuff about 15 years ago because I used to work with individuals doing consultations, and I know how to test for this stuff. And so I was seeing probably 85% of my clients were showing up with these same three metals, aluminum, barium, and strontium, and increasingly these biowarfare agents. And I'm going to discuss technologies that can identify these biowarfare agents in you. So anyway, these are some links to some institutes that are tracking this stuff. And this is on the downloads page in my slides. Some YouTube's and Google search terms. I'm just going to skip over that. These are GMO fibers found in our food supply. These are fibers created from a cross between a bacteria and a fungus, genetically engineered. It's a cross between Pseudomonas fluorescens and Agrobacterium rhabdobacter, and they generate these fibers. This is one of the sources of Morgellons disease, but it's also in our food supply, and this is organic potato here. So it's in our food supply. These are GMO fibers in pig lungs and in rhododendron leaves. This is the least gruesome picture I could find of Morgellons disease. Basically, it's when people get these GMO crosses between what they call cross-domain organisms in their bodies, they will create these fibers that are unidentifiable by normal medical tests and conventional science because they're not looking for genetically engineered fibers, and so they don't know what they are, and then they say things like, oh, people are creating this hysteria, hysterically, and that it's just all in their heads. Beyond nonsense. It's beyond nonsense. So you get these lesions, you get these bugs in you that grow these fibers, and they get throughout the body. Now, the cool thing is, for all of these things, there are solutions, which I'm going to show you. But Morgellons, you get these bugs in you, and then particularly if you're outside, it happens a lot with people who garden and also who have diets that are high in sugars and starches and refined carbs. These sugars and starches and carbs and alcohol, grains and pastas, they all get converted to sugar in the GI tract, and it feeds these bugs. It feeds pathogens of all kinds, not just these GMO bugs. And so if you've got a really bad diet and you're getting exposed to this stuff, you'll wind up with these symptoms. As I mentioned before, it was Lyme disease that the Japanese engineered back in World War II to use in warfare against us. And there's a book called Spirochete Warfare by Elena Cook where you can read the details of that. Now, are you guys depressed yet? Sure. Well, don't be depressed because we got solutions for all this stuff. And we always will have solutions for this stuff because the one big, fat, gigantic trump card that we have is consciousness creates reality. So the polarities, and we're going to get into the physics of this, but the polarities of the energies that create these problems, it's consciousness that created these problems. It's insane people that created these problems. I'll guarantee you, every single time a problem is created, simultaneously the solution is being created because the energy always comes in polarities. It can't exist without polarities. You can't have light without dark, or plus charge without minus charge, male without female, hot and cold. They always come in a package. So whenever these crazy people come up with whatever crazy things, or maybe they're not people, maybe they're extraterrestrial, then the solutions are always created. So if you understand these fundamentals, then all you got to do is start looking around for these solutions, and you'll find them. See, when some crazy stuff, I hear some crazy stuff, new thing, that some heinous thing that's coming up, I'm like, okay, well, let me start looking around for the solution, because I know it's out there. And if it's not out there, I'll create it, or I'll find somebody that's creating it. Rather than getting into victimhood, which we've all been trained and programmed with, oh, woe is me, I'm just SOL, what am I going to do? Get feisty, man. Find the solution. It's out there. And the more that you look and the more that you bump into this kind of stuff, you start becoming a nexus for this stuff. People, it's like people start sharing this stuff, and you wind up bumping into it all the time very quickly and easily. In my line of work, doing public speaking like this, I'm constantly getting people, amazing inventors and scientists and people with solutions to these things all the time. There are brilliant people on this planet. There are also extraterrestrials giving information to a lot of scientists and inventors and healers on this planet to provide these solutions. And this is not in the slides. You might want to write this one down. I'll see if I can add it before I get home. But there's a company in Florida that has a product called Perfect Waters. And it's perfect. Their website is perfectwaters.net. And the story I've been told is that these waters, what they do is you ingest them, you mix them, they're concentrates, you mix them with water and you ingest the water, and then they will convert toxins in the body into elements that the body can then use for food. So you don't even have to have any cleanse reactions or Herxheimer reactions with this stuff. You just drink it, and the toxins in your body get converted to minerals and elements the body can use. But the interesting part to me was that the formula for that was given to this lady by Arcturian ETs, according to her. So, and I can tell you firsthand myself, I've had ET contact my entire life. I've had face-to-face contact with them, and I've been given downloads and information for many, many years with solutions to this stuff. And so this is part of the reason why my worldview is much, much different than the average human being on this planet. And so I don't look at just what's going on with the human element. I look what's going on with the extraterrestrial and also the interdimensional element. There are a lot of great masters. I was talking with Douglas yesterday about this. There are a lot of great masters, physical and non-physical, on this planet who are also helping us. So call these people in, and ask for help, and they'll show up and help you. It's all intention. It's all focus. If all you're doing is sitting around eating hot dogs and hamburgers and drinking beer and watching TV, you're not going to be thinking about these. Well, you're not even going to be aware of these problems to begin with, and you're going to die prematurely and suffer a lot along the way. But if you're, starting to raise your head from the pasture and look up and look around, then when you start looking around, you'll start finding these solutions. So the trick is to understand that we all create our realities individually and collectively. We're all responsible for ourselves. And when you really get that, you never have to worry about being hurt or destroyed or whatever. It's like we have the solutions. We have the technology. So, here's some solutions. Detoxifying chemtrail pollutants, nuclear fallout, GMOs, and biowarfare agents from living organisms. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not any kind of a licensed practitioner of any kind. So, don't take any of this as health or medical advice. In fact, I advise you to not take any of my advice. This is infotainment. The FDA would not be very happy with me or you if you took any of this advice seriously and did anything with it. So I highly advise you to not believe anything I'm telling you. Don't take my advice. This is not medical advice. Seek out licensed professional help to help solve these issues. I'm just sharing with you my experience with this. Okay, we're not going to get into all of these details. We're just going to cover the basic points because tomorrow I'm doing a talk, I believe it's tomorrow, you'll have to look at the agenda, it might be Sunday, on specifics on healing any kind of issue. I think it's called Never Fear Being Sick Again or Illness Again or something like that. But at any rate, I'm going to get in. There you go. Never worry about disease again. See, I make these names up and I forget about them. I just move because I'm doing this stuff all the time. Okay, Sunday at 1 o'clock. That will be where I get into the details of this, of how to detoxify and heal the body, and not just the physical body, but also the emotions, the mind, how to reprogram limiting or self-destructive unconscious beliefs, and also the spiritual aspect. Because the truth is, all of this is a spiritual path. It's a spiritual issue. The things that we have going on this planet, it's all a spiritual issue. So, and to me, all spirituality is understanding the nature of things so that we can live in a joyous and harmonious life. That's all, to me, all it is. And there are lots of brilliant, brilliant masters throughout time who have taught these methods and techniques. And the coolest thing is, these ancient techniques, whatever they may be, whether it's Kundalini Yoga or meditation or Qigong or Tai Chi or Ayurveda or whatever, they're tried and true techniques that we can use with our own biology. We don't need these external technologies to solve our problems or to save us. We can do it all with our physiology. We can clear chemtrails out of the sky with our physiology. And I'm going to get into how we can do that. You can sit in a meditation circle and do that. So anyway, but the steps for physical detoxification and cellular regeneration. First thing you got to do is get testing to evaluate your health status so you know what to do. If you don't get testing to know exactly what's going on in the body, how are you going to deal with it? Then you're just guessing and taking a shotgun approach. So there are various tests that I'll be covering on Sunday that you can do for that. Then the next thing you got to do is internal cleansing. Get these toxins, whatever they are, whether they're viruses or microbes, bacteria, funguses, or cross-domain organisms, or heavy metals, whatever they may be, either get them out of the body or break them down and neutralize them into something that the body can use. Then you got to do external cleansing. As I mentioned, right now we've got fallout coming down on us. It's coming down in our rain. It's being measured, all the way in the East Coast. I think it was the state of Pennsylvania did some scientific studies and showed that they had cesium and various radioactive elements in their water supplies, and they directly correlated it to a rise in mortality rates in the state of Pennsylvania. Of course, this information is being suppressed when, for example, the Japanese equivalent of the EPA, I believe it was the Japanese nuclear, I forget the name of the organization, but at any rate, the Japanese equivalent of the EPA, the US EPA and Health Canada, about 2 months after the Fukushima disaster occurred, they, instead of increasing their monitoring of nuclear fallout in the atmosphere, they stopped it entirely. Because they know what was coming down, and they didn't want anybody to know. And part of the reason is also because if people understood how bad this was and how toxic nuclear fallout is, it wouldn't just spell the end of the nuclear power industry. More importantly, it would spell the end of the nuclear weapons industry. And the countries that have the nuclear advantage absolutely do not want that taken away. The nuclear power industry is simply a justification for the nuclear weapons industry. That's really what it's all about. Yes? I have not had a chance to do anything with the gas leak here in California. I've been so busy working on other solutions, but I do know people. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But at any rate, there are people here in Los Angeles that I can refer you to who have technologies and things to help heal that stuff. Again, it's, personally, I wouldn't be living anywhere near here, but I like living out in the country anyway. But even out in the country, you've got this stuff coming down, just not as bad. but we're living in a very toxic world. So you've got to learn these techniques for detoxifying and protecting yourself. And then also there are ways to keep it out of your atmosphere in your area and also out of your environment. And if it comes down in your environment, how to neutralize it. That's what we're going to be getting into. So as I mentioned, external cleansing. You can, for example, wash your clothes with zeolites. You can bathe with zeolites, and you can get this stuff off of the surface of your body and out of your clothes or whatever else. You can put zeolites on your land. There are actually zeolites that you can spread on your soil, and it will absorb these toxins. And then you can use microbes to break them down. Zeolite is a mineral that is created when molten lava hits either underground water or ocean water. And it creates these mineral structures that they're like little microscopic geodesic domes or little spheres. And inside those domes, they have a very strong negative charge. And one thing that toxins and pathogens have in common inside the body, there's certain things that they have in common that you can target them with to get rid of them. One of them is that they have a positive charge. You know, you've probably heard free radicals have a positive charge. Well, so do pathogenic bacteria and viruses and these heavy metals. So zeolites have a very strong negative charge in their cage structure. And if you get the right kinds of zeolites where the particle sizes are nanoscale, then they can go into the body anywhere water can go into, and they can pull these toxins out. And so I'm going to be covering specifics on that. And there are other things you can do to get it out of the environment. Microbes are really good for breaking down these toxins. I'm going to show you some evidence of this in Japan, right in Fukushima City. There's a farmer in Fukushima City who has no measurable radiation on his crops or his soil, simply using microbes to break them down. And he's able to sell his produce. So you got to keep yourself clean on the outside. And then you've also got to build your immune system by getting dense nutrients into the body in a format that the body can absorb. And again, I'll cover these in detail on Sunday. Okay, now here's a really cool silver bullet for radiation and also EMF, because I heard people in Sharon's talk asking about how to protect against EMF. And yes, you can use these various devices. I manufacture and sell various types of devices for EMF protection. But this is a really cool one. And there is, I need to discuss some fundamentals before I explain this and some other things we're going to be hitting on. But I need to explain the concept of monoatomic minerals. There are certain minerals on the periodic chart, certain elements, the platinum group metals. It's not important that you know which ones they are. Gold, silver, mercury, copper. Normally all of these are metals, and they look metallic because their atoms are bound to each other very tightly, very, very strongly in certain three-dimensional grid patterns that make them appear as metals. They're crystalline and they're very hard. But you can send them through processes, natural processes like photosynthesis or fermentation or vortexing water in magnetic fields, and you can break them apart into individual atoms of these metals. And when they break apart in that form, they become white ceramic powders, and they can be ingested, and they are extremely regenerative in the body. And in fact, your entire body is full of these minerals. The acupuncture meridians, for example, in the body are just junctures of these superconducting minerals along your nervous system and your brain neural pathways and your DNA. Your DNA is loaded up with these superconducting minerals, and your DNA is actually a superconducting antenna that connects the genetic pattern to your physical body. You know, conventional scientists and doctors will tell you that the DNA is the genetic blueprint. Well, it's actually not. It's the carrier of the blueprint. The actual blueprint is in consciousness itself, and it can't be destroyed. So, and I know this for a fact because I've helped many people, including myself, heal DNA damage. And how can you heal DNA damage if the DNA is damaged? I'm like, where's the blueprint for that, right? The blueprint is in consciousness. And there's actually a brilliant scientist named Dr. Thomas Bearden who was applying, well, he had a patent application I was reading for a method for neutralizing radioactivity, and he said he got the idea from studying how human cells regenerate. And what they do is they have these superconducting minerals in them, and they send a subtle energy signal through these superconducting minerals into other dimensions of time and space. And one thing I didn't mention about these minerals is they're not regular three-dimensional minerals. They're actually multidimensional minerals where it's kind of like an iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg is the physical mineral in our three-dimensional reality, but the majority of the mineral is existing simultaneously in other dimensions of time and space, or other frequencies of time and space. So they connect our physical bodies and our physical structures with other frequencies of space-time. And so therefore they connect our consciousness with our physical body. That's where the mind-body connection happens. Throughout the DNA, throughout the brain neural pathways, throughout the nervous system, these superconducting junctures, it's where the mind meets the body. You know, you hear medical doctors talk about the mind-body connection. Well, if there really is a mind-body connection, there has to be a mechanism for it. If consciousness meets the physical structures, there's got to be a mechanism for it. And there is. It's in these superconducting minerals. So you've got these minerals throughout the nervous system. And by the way, all of these junctures, what they really are black holes. They create these singularities, which are these little black holes, which are interdimensional portals to other dimensions of time and space. So it connects us to all these other dimensions of time and space. It also connects our consciousness to our physical body, and it connects us and our consciousness to all other living organisms throughout the cosmos. So that's how we are all one. It's not like some woo-woo, New Age metaphysical metaphor. We are literally connected through these superconducting junctures, through consciousness transmitting through them. So the cells will send a scalar wave signal out through these superconducting minerals into the past and get the blueprint from the consciousness of the organism. They get the healthy pattern from the past and bring it into the present, and that's how human cells regenerate. And that is a conventional phenomenon that occurs all the time, every day, around the clock, in your own body. So, these minerals can also be, you can make these minerals. As I mentioned, you can use photosynthesis because they occur in plants. So you can grow plants and you can feed them minerals that are high in these superconducting elements, which just happen to be volcanic minerals. Volcanic minerals are very high in these superconducting elements. You can also use fermentation. You can take volcanic rock powders, feed them to microbes. The microbes will eat them and break them down and create these monoatomics, which you can then ingest yourself or you can feed them to plants. These processes are natural, they're normal, they're ancient, they're nature's nanotechnology, and this is one way you get these into your body. The more of these monoatomics you get into your body, they can do things like neutralize radioactivity within the body. And I'm speaking from personal experience because I've been contaminated 4 times with high levels of radioactivity in my body, and I've neutralized them. First time it took me 10 days to get well. The second time it took me about 5 days, and now I can do it in about 36 hours. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you. So this is one of my tricks. This is a water that contains these superconducting elements. And because they're superconducting, and they're not superconducting when they're sitting in the bottle, they're superconducting when they are assimilated by the body. They plug into the body and then the superconductivity is created. But when that happens, the company that makes this stuff, it was a really brilliant man who developed this, and he was thrown in jail and died in jail a few months after being thrown in there. 85-year-old man. But he actually was looking for ways to find precious minerals and metals in the ground like gold and platinum and stuff like that, and also oil. And he figured it out. And in the process of doing that, he came up with this stuff kind of as a side thing. But it's a monoatomic mineral water. Also, by the way, these monoatomic minerals are known as ORMUS, which is an acronym, O-R-M-E-S, or O-R-M-U-S, which is an acronym for orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. So you may hear this referred to as ORMUS, but it's basically, these are what I call ORMUS homeopathics. It's a new class of supplements that more and more are coming out, and they have these amazing healing properties to counteract these insane technologies that are being used against us. So this ORMUS water has been programmed with all the anti-frequencies of all known radioactive elements. So it's radiating outward scalar waves constantly in the anti-frequencies of all known radioactive elements. Now, these waves, these scalar waves, I think I've got it farther in this slide. We'll get into how these things work. But they travel throughout the cosmos, and they're superluminal. They travel faster than the speed of light. So anyway, you ingest this stuff, 12 drops a day, till you use up 4 ounces, and it will remove nuclear radiation in the body. It will neutralize it. It also will neutralize the effects of EMF in the body. And I just recently got testing, and my practitioner was surprised to see that the EMF in my body was extremely low, because normally, even with me, she wasn't seeing that low. And it's because I had started using this stuff. So this is one of our little magic silver bullets that we can use for radiation, EMF and nuclear. You can also pull this stuff out of the body, as I mentioned, with nano zeolites. These are two specific brands that you can get. And I use this one on the left every day, Cosiva Advanced TRS. The man who developed this is very brilliant. He worked for a zeolite company, and they were kind of unethical, and he didn't like what they were doing, so he left and he developed his own brand. And he figured out how to break the cages down into individual cages and using vitamin C. And so the particles are so small, they can go anywhere in the body that water can go. And so, for example, they're using this for autism to great effect. You can spray this in your eyes, and it will go into the brain, and it will pull heavy metals out of the brain. Most of the time, autism is caused by heavy metals lodging in the brain and short-circuiting the neural pathways. So if you pull those metals out, the autism goes away. And that's exactly what they're seeing with this product, having phenomenal success just with this in autism. And there's another brand on the right that's a little less expensive. It's not quite as good of a product. The particles aren't quite as small, but they're still small enough. And that's a good one, ACZ Nano Zeolites. Here's another really interesting one. This one on the left. You guys, some of you have probably heard of Lugol's iodine or nascent iodine. Not all iodines are the same, but with any kind of mineral that you're going to get into the body, you want it to be in a form that's bioavailable. And really that means minerals where there are just a few atoms in a particle. Normally when you get the typical mineral supplements on the market, they're usually one particle will have thousands or tens of thousands of atoms in one particle, and they're much too big to get into cells and feed them. So they get lodged in the body, and they actually add to the toxicity. Some of it will be broken down by enzyme activity in the body, and it will help. So you get some relief, but the majority of it gets lodged in the body. So what you want to get is the kind of minerals that are available in food, which are angstrom and monoatomic elements, where you've just got a few atoms in a particle, or you've got individual atoms. So this iodine on the left, this is from Dr. Gabriel Cousens. It's called Illumidine. It's a monoatomic iodine that's been programmed with the anti-frequencies of all known radioactive elements. So not only does it go to the thyroid and feed the thyroid, and also it detoxifies the body, but it also emanates these scalar waves that will neutralize radioactivity in the body. So you get a triple effect from it, which is pretty cool. The thyroid is a very electric organ in the body, and it likes to uptake radioactive iodine or cesium. And so this is why you want to be taking iodine. And also, too, because of our soils being depleted, everyone pretty much, if they're not supplementing with iodine these days, is deficient in iodine. And I'll tell you this, I don't want to recommend any dosages or anything, but I think on the bottle these recommend 2 or 3 drops per day or something like that. I take 20 to 30 drops a day, and I did that for 4 months before I dropped it down to about 15. No. No. No, when you get nothing really, except more energy. No Herx reactions or anything like that, no cleanse reactions.
What prompted you to increase it like that?
Because I know the guys that make this stuff behind the scenes, and they tell me the truth. And that's, you can Google it. I sell this one on my I sell both these actually on my website, which is freshandalive.com. And I always, because I don't make much money on supplements, I make my money on information. So if nobody stops me, I usually have the lowest price on the internet on these supplements.
Could you repeat your website?
freshandalive.com. This one on the right is monoatomic iodine. It's known as nascent iodine. You'll see that commonly, nascent iodine. It doesn't have any frequencies programmed into it, but it's less expensive. This one on the left is like $50 for a half ounce or something, and that one on the right is, I think, $30 for an ounce. So what I do is, I take this one for a few months, and then I switch over. Because it can get, costly taking a bunch of supplements. But in truth, and I also teach living foods, lifestyle, and how to heal with food, and food always has to be the foundation. So I don't want to give you guys the wrong impression that, just take a bunch of bottles and pills and potions and you'll be fine. Food has to be the foundation, and living food has to be the foundation. But with that said, even if you're growing your own nutrient-dense food like I do, and I do a lot of things no one's even thought about doing in growing food to get unbelievable nutrient levels, even if you're doing that, very often you'll still need to supplement with these dense concentrations of food-based elements and supplements so that you can bring your levels up quickly enough, because it could take years to do it with food, and a lot of times you can't even do it with food. But that's something else. Actually, I think tomorrow, I guess, I'm going to be teaching about growing nutrient-dense food, so you can learn my tricks there. I don't have time for questions. I've got to get through this. We'll take questions at the end. So anyway, another one that's been proven phenomenally in Japan and in Chernobyl is taking liposomal vitamin C. It is really wonderful for pulling radiation out of the body. Basically, they attach vitamin C to lipids, and then it is much more metabolized by the body, and it's really good for. And actually, there's tons of foods and herbs that can pull radiation out of the body. Apple pectin, good old-fashioned apple pectin. You can buy this stuff for like $15 a pound online. It's just ground up apple skins. Also proven phenomenal in Fukushima for removing radiation from the body. I buy this particular one from herbsfirst.com. It's organic. Also, one of the problems that I encountered when I got radiation poisoning was that when you, on the periodic chart, you've got radioactive elements, and when you get up to uranium and the elements beyond that on the periodic chart, their atom sizes are too large for zeolites to latch onto. So you've got to have other things to pull them out. The good news is they generally don't go beyond the digestive tract because they're so large, but zeolites won't pull them out. So what I use are things like activated charcoal and food-grade activated charcoal. Don't go buying, charcoal for your grill. And clays, bentonite clays. This clay in particular is called sacred clay. It's phenomenal. It's a sort of a type of montmorillonite clay. Montmorillonite clay is also a really good one, but these clays will pull these larger elements and other toxins out of the gut. There's montmorillonite clay. This one is very commonly available in pretty much any health food store, Sunny 7. It's bentonite clay in a liquid. You can make your own powder, and this is what I do. And the FDA just got a new director, and I hear he's on the warpath to attack supplement companies. But I'd like to make this and bring it out to the public, but you can make it yourself, and that is just mix all of these together in a powder and keep it in your house as a first aid kit or when you travel. I always travel with a supplement first aid kit so that if I get any kind of bacteria or virus or radiation or anything, I can pull it out of my body and be on my way, no problem. So you just mix apple pectin powder. Let's say you take a cup of each of these, right? Apple pectin, psyllium seed husk, bentonite clay or some kind of clay, charcoal, and then throw in a few tablespoons of powdered chia or flaxseed, mix it all up, and then you can just throw a few tablespoons of that in a glass of water and drink it down, and it'll go through and it'll latch on all this stuff and pull it out of you. I've said this, and I'm going to say it again. I'll have a link at the end of this. Downloads.freshandalive.com. That's where you can download all these slides, so you don't have to even write this stuff down. Downloads with an S. DOWNLOADS. Downloads.freshandalive.com. Truly, really, that's true. There are a lot of sick people, and hearing is impaired, mental functions are impaired a lot, so I'm used to this, really. When I used to work with individuals, some of these people who would come to me, they would exasperate my staff because they were just so bonkers, and I recognized they were sick. Poor memories, poor sleep, poor focus. You get this junk out of your body and you nutrify the body, it goes away. I can relate, but you know what? I didn't go to bed at all Tuesday night. I came here, I spent the entire day meeting and reading with people, went to bed that night, slept like a log because I have a technology that I always bring with me to help me sleep deep. Fine, I was fine. When your body is strong, see, we have such low standards for health these days because, quite honestly, everybody are sick mutants. We're all sick mutants. And when you get healthy, when you truly get healthy and your body is nutrified, I'm 55 years old. I go to the doctor to get prescriptions for massage. And they make me do all these tests so they can make some money off of me. And when they're doing the tests, they're like, okay, what meds are you on? I said, I'm not on any meds. What? No meds? You're 55 years old. No meds? It's like, no, are you on meds? And these people are like in their 20s and 30s. It's like, yeah, I'm on meds. It's like, really? Would you like to get off of them? Here's my card. And they never call. But when you're healthy, you think clearly, you're fast, you're smart, you're beautiful, you feel good all the time. I don't have aches and pains. I don't get up in the morning with backaches or feeling bad. I don't have any of that. My body heals fast. If I get cut or something, it heals fast. It's because I learned this a while back, especially when I started hitting my 50s. I started taking massive doses of minerals. And minerals are super key because minerals build all the structures in our body. And as you age, your assimilation goes down, and also our food doesn't have it in it anymore. Even if you're eating organic, if you think organic's the solution, wrong. You either need to be growing your own food or you need to be getting it from people who are growing biodynamically or know how to amend food and soil. And this is what I'm going to be showing this weekend, is how to grow nutrient-dense food. You can take in superfoods, but you got to be taking in nutrient-dense foods. And even so, I started taking massive doses of minerals because I ran myself into the ground developing these solutions. I spent years not sleeping and not eating and wearing myself out for the betterment of myself, really, but also humanity. So I had to kind of rebuild. And these massive doses of minerals are what brought me back around, along with, food, real food. But when you get that way, you don't have to have any aches or pains in your 50s or 60s or 70s. You don't have to have health issues. You can regenerate stuff. I've met 2 women who, you guys are very fortunate being here in California because you're close to the man who did this. I met 2 women who were in car wrecks, and they injured the C3, 4, and 5 vertebrae in their necks. And the one lady, her vertebrae fused together into one chunk of bone. She was in intense pain. Her life was a mess. The other lady, the same thing happened, but the doctors had wired the vertebrae together, and they fused together. This doctor up in Sacramento named Dr. Art Martin, and this is not in these notes. His website is energymedicineinstitute.com. He worked on these women just on working on their minds. He worked on their conscious and unconscious minds, and in 4 hours he was able to revert those bones back to normal. They were able to restructure the physical bones in their body back to normal. And the lady with the wire in her neck, the wire disappeared. This is the power that we have. EnergyMedicineInstitute.com. This is what the powers that be do not want us to know. They don't want us to know how powerful we are. Talk to Douglas here. I'm sure he's seen this over and over again in the practices that he does. We have the ability not just of mind over matter within the body, but without the body. And these great masters who spend a lot of time and focus on developing his abilities, they have what we would call supernatural powers. It's not supernatural. It's natural. We just don't develop those powers, and we're toxic. So you clean out, you build up your body and your strength and your focus, and you start doing these practices. You can do all this with your biology. Douglas, right here. Dr. Art Martin, EnergyMedicineInstitute.com. Okay, moving on. Now, here's one that is a silver bullet for these pathogens, including biowarfare agents, including genetically engineered biowarfare agents or Morgellons or whatever. Chlorine dioxide. AKA MMS, Miracle Mineral Solution. I prefer now the newer version of it called CDS, Chlorine Dioxide Solution. And what this stuff is, if you go Googling it, you're going to see all kinds of FDA warnings about it and people saying that it's toxic and that kind of stuff. I don't recommend anything without extensive testing on myself and other people for months or years. And when I was first told about this stuff by a friend who was a fellow student at Hippocrates Institute, I said, there is no way in hell I'm putting bleach in my body. Because that's what it is. It's bleach. It's not Clorox bleach, but it's a type of bleach. So I said, look, I do everything with food. I do everything naturally, and I'm not going to be using this stuff. But, I also don't volunteer for radiation poisoning either. Spirit brings these things to me. So I got Lyme disease. And I thought, I don't want to mess with Lyme disease. I mean, it's a pain in the butt to deal with. So I'm going to try this stuff out and see what happens. And I got rid of it in 3 weeks. And I didn't even really do much. I was kind of farting around with it, taking it willy-nilly. I wasn't even like on a regular regimen. And in 3 weeks, it was gone. So I started testing it in my body and in my family and in subjects that I could get to work with, and confirm that what they say is true about it, that when you ingest this stuff, now you have to dilute it, and go to these websites and read the protocols for this stuff, but basically you put either a few drops or a few cc's. If you're using the CDS, it's going to be in cc's. If it's the MMS, it's going to be drops. The CDS tastes far, far better than MMS. MMS tastes horrible. I won't even describe to you what it tastes like because it would be kind of naughty. But at any rate, this stuff is simple. Make a 6-ounce glass of lemonade, sweeten it with stevia. Because if you've got pathogens in your body and you sweeten it with honey or some kind of sweetener, sugar, you're going to feed the pathogens. So do it with stevia. That won't feed the pathogens. You put a few cc's of this stuff into the 6 ounces of your lemonade, drink it down, and you can do that anywhere from 3 to 5 times a day, depending on how sick you are. And it is magic. It will radically reduce your time to heal. Now, I got violently ill from a biowarfare agent, and again, I don't volunteer for this. Spirit brings it my way. It was so bad. Normally, when I get, I never get sick, but if I get exposed to something really nasty, like let's say I got exposed to a really nasty flu, I can get rid of it in 3 or 4 days at most. But in this case, I was bedridden around the clock in intense pain, 24/7 for a week. I couldn't walk. Finally, after a week, I got up and I fell to the ground. My legs were so weak I couldn't even walk. And it turns out when I figured it was some kind of GMO bug, and sure enough, when I was able to go get testing, it turned out to be a biowarfare agent. And so I tested it with a QXCI Skio, and there's also a device called an Indigo that can identify these things. And we'll get into that in a moment. So anyway, my stomach was so upset, I could barely even handle water. I certainly couldn't handle this stuff. So I had to figure out how to, deal with that. And I wound up finding, it turns out I had a few things at my house, and I wound up finding other things that were very benign that will kill these things off as well. This is one of them. It's something called Microbe Blast. You can get it at restandrepair.com. And this was originally developed for agriculture. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what to do with it for agriculture because the guys that developed it for agriculture, they went to big agriculture with it because they were getting tomato plants 15 feet high with 3,000 to 4,000 nutrient-dense tomatoes per vine. And of course, what did Big Ag do? They didn't say, yeah, let's have that. They tried to kill them a couple of times. So they went into hiding, and now they don't talk about that anymore, and they're selling it as a parasite cleanse because you can ingest it, and it will break down this particular protein that is a part of all pathogens. There's certain structures and qualities of any kind of pathogen, whether it's viral or bacteria, that you can see. And this targets these certain proteins and breaks them down, and they just fall apart and die. So this stuff is phenomenal as well. Now, good old-fashioned, well, they're calling it all kinds of other things. Back in the day when I was in high school, we called this pot or herb or other things. Now they're not even calling it hemp anymore. Now they're calling it not even CBD. It's like MTC and all these other acronyms because it's being legalized more and more. We're talking about marijuana. It's being legalized more and more, and so it's being used as medicine increasingly. And one of the interesting things about this, it's kind of like a heal-all. It heals all kinds of stuff, including radiation in the body. So I've been using the Charlotte's Web hemp extract. It's a CBD oil. It has no THC, the stuff that gets you high. It's well beyond the legal limit. So this is legal in all 50 states in the United States. And then Holden's Hope hemp paste. And the hemp paste, I think, is much stronger. But the Charlotte's Web stuff is easier to do if you're working. It's really easy to get cleanse reactions with the hemp paste. But these are both phenomenal products. Now, as I mentioned, I was so sick to my stomach with this biowarfare bug that I couldn't handle MMS and CDS, so this is what I used. I used silver. And I had a couple of different kinds. I had one called Nanoxide, which is very expensive. It's like $140 a quart. And so I was guzzling that stuff. And this was another one that saved me, Accelerated Silver. This is a very unique product. It's a silver hydrosol. It's not colloidal. It's not ionic. And I can tell you this, too. There's a lot of debate online about which kind of silver to take, colloidal, angstrom, ionic, this, that, the other. The truth is, you can't go by any of that because everybody's calling their product by some different name and it's not necessarily accurate. Nano silver, right? It's meaningless. What you have to find out is what the particle size is. Not the parts per million, but the particle size. How many angstroms are the particle sizes? You need to have just a few atoms of silver in each particle so that they can get into cells and feed them. So I can tell you this accelerated silver is the smallest that I've come across. Dr. Rima Lebo's got a great one called the Silver Solution. Dr. Joseph Mercola, who's a friend and a neighbor of mine, has a great one that's the same thing, the Silver Solution. These things work extremely well when you're so sick that you can't handle CDS or MMS. Also, oxy powder. This is actually an intestinal cleanse. It's a colon cleanse. But what happens when you ingest, you take a few capsules of this before you go to bed, and it goes to the GI tract, and it fizzes, and it percolates, and it floods the GI tract with oxygen. It dissolves plaque, mucoid plaque, and various things in the GI tract and helps flush it out faster, so it gets these pathogens out of you faster, but it also floods the GI tract with oxygen. One of the things that happens when you're sleeping, when you've got some kind of a bug, is those bacteria or viruses or whatever kind of pathogens they are, they will regroup while you're sleeping because you're not hitting them with anything to knock them back. So this goes through you while you're sleeping and knocks them back, so you heal faster. Another thing you can use is a parasite zapper. Not the Hulda Clark type, but the Dr. Bob Beck type. World Without Parasites is a good place to get one. It's about $130, I think. $134. Yeah. It's a great device. You strap it to your body. What happens is these little copper plates here, you put them up next to your body, and they put out a very weak square wave signal. It's like an electrical pulse that goes on and off really fast and really hard. Bam, 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 on and off, on and off. But it's very low voltage, so you don't feel it. But the bugs in you feel it, and they hate it, and it kills them. So you can strap it to your abdomen, you can strap it to your leg, you can strap it to your feet, you can strap it to your neck, wherever you're being affected. They're fantastic. Really accelerates the healing. And then the other thing you want to do is flood the body with probiotics, beneficial bacteria that will crowd out the pathogens. And so there is effective microorganisms, these ones on the left, that were developed by a Japanese agriculture professor named Tiro Ihiga. And this is what's neutralizing radioactivity in Japan. This is why the farmer in Japan does not have any radiation on his crops. This stuff is ridiculously cheap. 1 quart of it is $24, but here's the cool thing. You can take a quart of it and mix it in 5 gallons of water with a quart of organic molasses and let it sit for 3 weeks at 95 degrees, and you'll then have 5 gallons of it. So you can make 5 gallons of this stuff, and you only take like 2 tablespoons at a time. But here's the really cool part. It's not just a probiotic for ingesting. It's also, you can use it for many other things. You can mix it with water and spray it on crops, and it will go into the soil and break minerals down and make them bioavailable and feed your crops and strengthen your crops. It breaks down toxins in soil or anywhere you put it, including radioactive elements, and breaks them down into non-toxic elements. And this is being proven over and over again, especially in Japan right now with radiation. They're spraying it on radioactive soil and crops. No detectable radiation when they're done with this stuff in a matter of a couple of weeks. You can use it as a house cleaning agent. You can spray it in your shower and it will eat soap scum and dissolve it. Because you can ingest it, it's totally healthy. You can use it as an odor eliminator. Pet odors, carpet, whatever. You can spray it on that. It loves to eat mold and mildew for lunch. I had a brand new, really expensive air conditioning system put in my house in Florida, and after a couple of months, it was loaded with mold. And the reason it was loaded with mold was because they had sprayed the inside of this air conditioner with some toxic chemicals, paints. And mold and fungus and parasites and pathogens are nature's garbage collectors. They break toxins down into non-toxic elements. So here's this toxic junk in my air conditioner. Nature's just trying to break it down. And I saw this mold. I was like, oh my God, I had just spent a fortune replacing all of our carpets and our ductwork and the air conditioning and repainting the house and all this stuff. And then the air conditioner's full of mold blowing it all over the house. So I sprayed this on the inside of my air conditioner, and then I turned it on, turned the fan on, and I misted it into the intake. and it blew it through the air conditioning ducts. I came back 2 weeks later, all the mold was gone. And I don't mean it died and it was still sitting there. It was gone. It disappeared. Because these are living organisms that eat mold. So it's a fantastic way to get rid of mold and mildew. And there are other probiotics. These on the right are more concentrated. So if you're really sick, you can take mega doses of probiotics and accelerate the healing. Now, somebody asked, how did I do the testing for the radioactive elements? Well, one of the things that I do, and this is not an FDA-approved diagnostic device, so I can't say this is the diagnostic device, but I use this along with other testing to screen what's going on within my body. It's a device called a QXCI Skio. The newer version of it is called the Indigo. It is a scalar energy device. It's coupled with a computer program that has a database of many thousands, well, it measures the frequency, the subatomic frequency of elements. So, for example, hydrogen has a certain vibrational frequency at a subatomic level. This is not in any way metaphysics. This is pure physics. Any physicist can tell you that the subatomic particles of all atoms vibrate at certain frequencies, and each element has a different frequency. So, for example, hydrogen has a certain frequency. Oxygen has a certain frequency. So if you combine two oxygens with a hydrogen, you have an overall frequency that can be measured and identified as water. So you can combine these elements like Tinker Toys into molecules, into cells, into organs, organ systems, or toxins or pathogens or whatever, and you can identify them at a very fundamental level. And so that's how this machine works. It has a database of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions by now, of different materials, organs, toxins, pathogens, even emotions. It can measure emotions because emotions are scalar energy. It can measure that and read it, compare it against its database of known values, and it can identify what's going on in your body. It's crazy what this thing can see. So it will identify many biowarfare agents, and it will identify some of these cross-domain bugs and other things, and radioactive elements. But here's the cool part. I discovered this quite serendipitously. I did not know it would do this, but it can send. I knew it can send energy back into the body, and it can accelerate healing. And they can't make any claims about this stuff because it's not an FDA-approved device for that. But it is approved by the FDA for biofeedback, so that's what they call it, a biofeedback device. But it can also send scalar energy back into the body in the anti-frequencies of what the problem is, and it can neutralize it. So in the case of radioactivity, it can actually neutralize radioactivity in the body very quickly. So when I got radiation poisoning the first time, I couldn't see a practitioner for about 5 days. I was already taking zeolites and certain supplements that were pulling this stuff out of me, but I didn't know what it was. It was the first time I got radiation poisoning. I didn't know what radiation poisoning felt like. I knew it was serious by the way it felt. So by the time I get to the practitioner, a lot of the stuff in my GI tract had been pulled out and I was feeling better, but I got a 3-hour session on one of these things, and when I was done, I was right as rain. I felt like $1 million again. So it's absolutely amazing. And this is something that's very important to understand about this scalar energy or orgone or chi or prana, whatever you want to call it, the energy of consciousness, whether it's created by a device or by us. It can neutralize radioactivity. It can restructure matter in the body. So we can heal ourselves. You don't want to buy one of these machines. It's like $20,000, $30,000, and it takes about 10 years of training to learn how to use it. So you go to a practitioner, unless you want to dedicate your life to that. Can anybody tell me what time it is?
Yeah, it's about 25:37.
6:34? Okay. And I've got... Yeah. Well, the Russians are way ahead of us in all of this, way ahead of us. So, getting the stuff out of the environment. I mentioned the effect of microorganisms. This is actual brew bucket that I made, 5 gallons of this brew. It develops these proteins on the surface, and it looks real funky, but you can make gallons of this stuff. And the cool thing is you can take volcanic rock powders, you can take minerals, other minerals, you can take herbs. You can go and look at, for example, herb companies and the different herbs that they put in their formulas. And let's say you want to do a kidney cleanse. So you go look at a kidney formula, you take the herbs and throw them in here, ferment them down for a few months, 2 to 3 months typically, and then you've got 5 gallons of, for around $50 to $75, you've got 5 gallons of kidney formula. So I teach people, and they're actually on that downloads page, there are instructions on how to brew this stuff. But you can make your own medicines this way. They're far more powerful than anything you can buy. This is the Japanese farmer. This is a YouTube video which you can see on my radiation links page in Fukushima with no measurable radiation on his crops or his soil. And he simply used those microbes, and he probably spent $25 to do it. You know, molasses, water, 5 gallons. And that 5 gallons, you don't spray it full strength. You water it down like 1 part to 10,000 parts. So it's like a tablespoon per 5 gallons of water, and you spray it on your land. It's crazy cheap. You know. So I've talked already about scalar energy, and I'm going to breeze through this. This phenomena of scalar energy, orgone, chi, prana, tachyon energy, life force, all these different names, all it is God consciousness. It's this energy that's zipping out from the centers of galaxies, and it comes flying out, and it's spiraling as it goes, and it's branching as it goes. So it's this branching, fractaling, spiraling energy. It goes far beyond what we've been told is the speed of light, but it is light. It's superluminal light. And it slows down when it gets to us, or when it becomes three-dimensional. It slows down and coagulates into the three-dimensional matter and electromagnetic energy that we can see and measure. So it's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. It's this energy zipping through the cosmos. It's passing through everything like it's not there, and it slows down and turns into this 3D reality. If you look at, for example, a hydrogen atom, if you blew a hydrogen atom up to the size of a football field, the nucleus would be about the size of a golf ball, and the electron would be out at the 100-yard line. So you've got a gigantic amount of space in between the particles of matter, and actually that's kind of an old model. When you go below that model, it's all energy. But this dispassionate light scalar energy, it's zooming through the very particles of matter itself. Some scientists call it zero-point energy. When you're looking at it at an atomic level and it's coming up through through these atoms, they call it zero-point energy. But it's all the same thing. It's God consciousness, and we can grab it and harness it. And in fact, that's what we do. Our bodies. This is phys.org, which is a very well-known and respected physics journal talking about this stuff. So this is not me talking about this, and this is not from ancient esoteric literature. This is in modern physics journals. So these galaxies, as you can see, they're not just pinwheel-shaped. They're actually toroidal-shaped. They're donut-shaped. When you're looking at them from the side, particularly energetically, the energy is coming out of the center. It's spiraling outward. It's branching as it goes, and it goes around the donut, and it comes back in the other side. And the way that it's relayed through the cosmos is at the centers of suns and the centers of planets, it's been discovered that they have black holes at their centers. They have singularities. So the whole cosmos is this web of black holes. And the energy, this God consciousness, this scalar energy coming from the centers of galaxies, it's relayed from the large suns at the center of the galaxy outward from sun to sun to sun to sun. So when it gets to us, it's coming down to us from our sun, and it's coming up from the center of the earth, from the singularity of the center of the earth. Hence these practices like Tai Chi, Qigong, Ayurveda, Kundalini Yoga, etc., where you're bringing energy up from below and down from above and bringing it into the physical structure. It's because as above, so below. Within your body, your whole body is a web of black holes too, as I've already mentioned. All these superconducting junctures along the nervous system, throughout the brain, along the DNA, it's all these superconducting junctures, these black holes. So it never ends. Galaxies have these toroidal fields. These toroidal fields. As we know, Earth and planets have these magnetic fields that are toroidal shaped, donut shaped, right? It's not just magnetic fields, it's scalar fields and electric fields. Well, galaxies have those same shaped fields. They have toroidal fields around galaxies. So do solar systems. So do planets. So do suns. So do human beings. So do cells. So do atoms. So do subatomic particles. Ad infinitum, as above, so below. It goes on forever in both directions, macroscopic and microscopic. I'm going to skip that one. And as I mentioned, this energy is not only spiraling, but it's branching, it's fractaling. And you see evidence of this throughout nature. Your body, your nervous system is a fractal. Your blood system is a fractal. It's just branching. There's the toroidal field of the body. You see this a lot in ancient meditation practices and energy practices. And by the way, the chakras, all the chakras are, your brain is a scalar wave transceiver, which means that your brain is this device that picks up this God consciousness coming from the sun and the earth, and the superconductivity in it captures it, and then it rebroadcasts it out in this field around you, and it also transmits it through the nervous system. So your brain is a transceiver. It picks it up and it rebroadcasts it through the brain and the nervous system. So this is your chi, this is your prana, this is your life force. And when you understand this, you can do these ancient practices that are extremely simple to purify the mind and the body and enhance your field and enhance your ability to manifest, to enhance your ability to modify matter and energy. And when you can do that, you cannot be controlled. But the chakras, all they are junctures on the spine of large deposits of these superconducting minerals. And as I mentioned, this energy is spiraling, it's vortexing, and hence all the symbology of the spinning, spiraling energy coming out of the chakras. That's what it's all about. That's where, by the way, this spiraling, this vortexing is where you get all these polarities of hot and cold, light and dark, male and female, plus and minus charge, masculine and feminine. It's all coming from this motion, this galactic motion. The entire universe is spiraling and spinning. Now, crystals have these superconducting minerals within them, and they can also act like antennas or lenses to pick this energy up. This is why body workers, Reiki workers, will use crystals many times, because you can send energy from your own physiology out to heal people, and if you need a specific frequency for a specific purpose, you can use a crystal to modify the frequency and send it out and have a specific application. We're going to skip this. This is about the Schumann resonance. There's a pulsing in the Earth's atmosphere called the Schumann resonance that our brains and bodies entrain with, and it de-stresses us and relaxes us. I make devices that pulse at that frequency with scalar waves, and they de-stress people and accelerate healing. We're going to skip this stuff. But frequency is everything. You can take, whether it's sound or light or scalar waves or any kind of energy, and you can use one frequency that can harm. You can use another frequency that can heal. You can use frequencies that can counteract and neutralize harmful frequencies. The ancients recognized this. They observed this, for example, in eggs. They noticed that the life force inside of eggs was very nurturing for the life growing in that eggshell. And it's because eggshells are high in these superconducting monoatomic elements. They concentrate scalar energy within them. Life force, God consciousness. The ancients recognized this, so they started making vessels to do the same thing out of clays that are high in these superconducting elements. This is why the traditional ways of making kimchi, for example, are to put it inside of a very specific type of clay pot shaped like an egg and buried it in the ground, because when it's in the ground, it's going to pick up the frequencies from the Earth's center and from the sun, and it's going to impart it in the food, and you're going to have a lot more nutrient levels. The bacteria are going to break the food down, and when they're happy in that environment, they create more nutrients. Same thing with water. The amphoras, the Greek amphoras, they're shaped like this because they impart this scalar energy into the water and structure it, make it more hydrating, make it more healing. For those of you who are fans of Rudolf Steiner and biodynamics, Steiner was connected with a lady named Madame Blavatsky who channeled all this information, and he took it and he turned it into practical applications. So when I first came across this many years ago, about 30 years ago, I thought it was nonsense. I'm fresh out of engineering school, and I met this guy who took cow poop from a cow horn, put it into a 5-gallon bucket of water, and he starts vortexing it with his arm. And he vortexes it for a few minutes in one direction, and then he stops and reverses and vortexes in the other direction. He said, now you can spray this on crops and it'll make them grow better. And I said, that is absolute BS. Because I didn't understand the physics of it. I was still programmed with what I had been taught in engineering school, which pretty much most of that is wrong. It's just flat out wrong. The physics that we've been taught, the chemistry and biology, it's mostly wrong. So anyway, with Steiner's work, what they do is take cow poop, they stuff it in a cow horn, which is, by the way, a Fibonacci curve spiral with a big open end spiraling down to a point, and it's made out of bone, which is high in these ormus elements, these superconducting monoatomic minerals. So you're putting a probiotic, this cow poop is full of bacteria, and you're putting it in a Fibonacci curved superconducting horn that concentrates life force, and you bury it in the ground. And then, by the way, in this case, they are burying the horns in a circular pattern. That itself picks up the energy coming from the center of the Earth and from the sun, and it creates a localized scalar wave vortex. So you're creating vortexes within vortexes that enhance life force. And you've got these microbes in these horns, you let it sit for a year, the Earth goes through its entire astronomical cycle, and at the end of that year it's been exposed to all these different frequencies, and then what you get out of that is a very extremely concentrated ormus soil, which you can then put into water and create a homeopathic solution, which you can spray in large areas of land and rebuild land, particularly restore it from chemical farming. Steiner understood back in the early 1900s that chemical farming was going to destroy our soils, and we would not have enough compost to go around to fix it. Now, as Sharon mentioned in her talk, I think she got this one from me when she interviewed me, the ancients got these ideas, well, they probably got it from various places, maybe ET contact, meditating and connecting with other types of beings, but also just observing nature. Volcanic mountains emit these scalar wave vortexes, because at the center of the Earth you've got this singularity that's creating these scalar waves. They come up to the surface, and when they pass through the minerals in the crust, minerals are crystals, and crystals are oscillators. They change frequency from one to another. This is a very, very common use in electronics. So this energy comes up to the surface of the Earth, it passes through these minerals, the frequency is changed, and on volcanic mountains it creates these scalar wave vortexes. So you've got these vortexes coming up out of the tips of mountains, and when you've got cloud formations overhead, it slices them up into these lenticular clouds. Well, the ancient people noticed that, so they started building their own artificial mountains out of what kind of stone? Superconducting stones, stone that's high in these monoatomic minerals. Volcanic stone, and you can do the same thing. And you don't have to build a gigantic pyramid like this. There's a Russian physicist named Alexander Golod. Now, by the way, our illustrious government, they've been studying this stuff, and they've used their stupid, awkward, backward ways to engineer these ridiculous antennas that are developing very harmful frequencies for warfare and weather modification and other things. And these are the patterns that they create in clouds. These are classic longitudinal wave patterns that you see in clouds. So when you see these kinds of wavy patterns in clouds, these days, most of the time, it's HARP antennas being run. And so particularly if you're seeing chemtrailing, where you've got that white haze in the atmosphere and you're seeing this kind of longitudinal wave pattern, you're being sprayed and harped at the same time. And what that does, when you've got these metals in the atmosphere, they act like an antenna so that those waveforms from HARP, they're spread out more evenly on the land below. And it's a great way to suppress consciousness and make people more docile and dumb them down. And also in warfare, you can actually scramble the brains of soldiers so they don't even know why they're there. But this is being used for various reasons to suppress consciousness is one of the major ones. So if you see this, then you know that that's particularly for widespread areas. I was flying over Georgia one time for 150 miles. This is all you could see. Now, I saw this in my own backyard back in 2000, well, prior to 2011 I was seeing this, but I really got ticked off in 2011 when I started thinking about cleaning up the Fukushima radiation that was headed our way. This is in my backyard, and you can see in these cloud formations, they're actually not clouds. This is from geoengineering spraying. These are little wispy white geoengineering spraying, and they're bombarding us with some kind of scalar waves, and you get these fractal patterns, these snowflake-looking patterns. These are fractal patterns from longitudinal waves from HARP antennas. And you can also see some chemtrails going in there. It really ticked me off. And I don't like being abused like this. I've had programming in early childhood that made me a real fighter. I don't like people bullying. When I was in school, I used to always defend kids that were getting bullied, and I would, if I had to, I'd pick up a brick and knock a guy out if I had to. So I looked at this and I said, no, not me, not the kid. I'm not putting up with this crap. This is an aerial view of a longitudinal wave pattern from one of these antennas. And you can see the interference patterns. So here's a solution. Dr. Alexander Golod in Russia, who is a high-level physicist in the State Defense Center, I think he's a colonel, or was. He started studying pyramids when the Cold War warmed up a little bit, or when it was a little less, I guess I should say. He had a multi-million-dollar a year budget working for the Russian military, so he started studying pyramids. And I'm sure the Russian military was interested in it for warfare, but he was a very benevolent man, and he was interested in it for beneficial purposes. And he built many pyramids and found a lot of different benefits, increasing oil well production. And this one outside of Moscow, it's 144 feet high. He discovered that this one, which is made out of glue and wood and fiberglass, that it would neutralize radioactivity in the atmosphere for about a 350-kilometer diameter. It would also neutralize it in the ground, and it would also neutralize toxins in the atmosphere and in the ground. It would reduce earthquakes, and it would also balance the weather. It would clean the atmosphere of these charged particles that throw off the ionization of the atmosphere, send it out into space, and therefore, since it wasn't in the atmosphere, you didn't get any kind of severe weather. And he had a multi-million-dollar a year budget to prove this, and he also had top-secret Russian radar where he could look at the scalar waves and see what was going on. This is the inside of one of his pyramids. These are people sitting in front of large crystalline globes getting healed. They discovered that people can go inside of these things and get healed of major diseases. He started selling these little crystal pyramids that he puts inside of there and programs them with frequencies, and then he can ship them to people and they can use them for healing. Many, many uses. This is a picture of a scalar wave vortex coming off the tip of a pyramid. All a pyramid is an antenna that picks up this energy coming from the center of the earth and from the sun, and it creates a localized field, and it creates a double helix vortex out of the tip. And that vortex can do things like neutralize radioactivity or clean pollutants out of the atmosphere and send them out into space. Now, there's a lot of interesting benefits. We're running out of time, so I'm not going to cover them all. You can check these out on the downloads if you go to my downloads page. But I think one of the most interesting ones, aside from the ones I mentioned, was they noticed there were these flowers growing in the fields around that large pyramid that no one had ever seen before. So Golod called in a botanist to have them identified, and they discovered that the flowers had been extinct on Earth for 11 million years. And he theorized that these pyramids were able to latch on to the pattern for these flowers from what some people might call the Akashic records, or he calls it the quantum field, and bring it back into existence. And this is the power of scalar energy. This is consciousness. It's God consciousness. And we are conduits. We are just like these pyramids. We're antennas for this stuff. This is why I think the Bible says we're the hands of God. We are. We're part of this gigantic recursive fractal energy system. The universe is a giant energy circuit, and we're a piece of it, just like these pyramids are. So we can do the same things. It's just that, you may not have time to sit out in your yard all day and meditate in a circle and clear this stuff. So we make devices to do it so that we can sit around eating and having good times with people and drinking tea and connecting up with Sai Baba or whoever. So anyway, there's a preeminent physicist named Dr. Konstantin Meil in Germany who, for those of you who are interested in like the real science of this dude is hardcore. He did what Einstein and his contemporaries couldn't do, which was find and prove the unified field equation, which is one equation that describes all matter and energy at every scale of existence. He proved it. You think he'd get the Nobel Prize from it? No, he got attacked heavily. But he's proven it experimentally, and he's proven it mathematically, and he also he builds scalar devices and shows various benefits from them, and he has written tons of books on this stuff. So if you want to get into the hardcore nitty-gritty science and math of it, he's the man. By the way, there are 61 patents worldwide for methods for neutralizing radioactivity. This is a big, big secret out in front of everybody that nobody knows about. This is on my site, and it's on the Radiation Links page, and it's also in this slideshow on my site. These are the specific patents, including 8 of them in Japan. We've had the technology for many decades to neutralize radioactivity. We could clean up Fukushima and Chernobyl and all this radioactivity on the planet in a few months with these technologies. Back in the early 90s, I worked with a man named Ewell Brown who had free energy technology, water fuel, and it could not only power everything non-toxically, it could neutralize radioactivity. And I witnessed it done with 5 Department of Energy officials and a bunch of senators and congressmen. The DOE officials all said, this is impossible, this can't happen, this doesn't work. But the senators got excited, and they went back to Congress, and they wanted to develop it, and they all got shut up. Al Gore also was aware of this. You know, he came out. I laughed when he came out. I went and saw his movie, An Inconvenient Truth. I was laughing my butt off because I know this. Like Gore knows what's going on. That was all a smokescreen to get a carbon tax passed, a global carbon tax. So anyway, there's the 61 patents. Now, as I mentioned, I developed a device that will clear this stuff, and I actually sell this very quietly. This is probably the first time in a long, long time I've been to a conference and spoke about this. But it's a little device about yay big, and it'll clear a 75-mile radius of the chemtrail pollutants and nuclear fallout, and it will balance the weather. We've got them all around Florida, and they're protecting Florida. We haven't had a hurricane since 2005. Last summer, we had a hurricane and a tropical storm that came up from Cuba, and they fell apart when they got outside of Miami. This is the power that we have. No, it's complicated. It's a circuit that generates scalar waves and sends it to an antenna that mimics DNA, and then that's encased in minerals that contain certain frequencies. It's quite complicated. What? What? Yes, private property. We don't go... I learned a long time ago working for Free Energy, you don't go to public officials of any kind with any of this kind of technology because it will get attacked and squashed. And there are other people who have done this. There are people that came to Arizona and Florida and went to city officials and said, hey, we can fill your reservoir back up. And then what happens is, in one case, a weatherman, a TV weatherman, attacked them and said, this is impossible, show us the science. And they didn't have, peer-reviewed scientific journals proving it, and so the city wouldn't pay for it, and ultimately they ran out of town. But I don't go asking anybody for permission. I just go do it because we need this stuff now. We don't need to wait around for politicians and these kind of people to give us approval. I don't seek approval or permission from anybody. I'm a sovereign human being. So this is what my backyard looked like before I put this device out. All these fractal patterns and the chemtrailing. And this is what it looks like after. Puffy white clouds, blue sky. This is what it's supposed to look like. We have normal weather now. We get sufficient rainfall. Before this, we had droughts and fires, and then we had flooding. We don't get that anymore. All across Florida. I'm in the Daytona Beach area. Now, it's interesting because the first... What's that? I'll do question and answers after this outside. Have we got another speaker after this, Saeed?
Yeah, we have.
Okay, so I'll go out in the hallway. Okay, well, you can catch me later at my booth. So anyway, just be aware that we have this available. You can buy it from us. I also teach people how to make their own static devices for doing this, not as powerfully. This is the Event Horizon. I was coming into town one time, out of town. It's about 75 miles out from my home. And you can see the chemtrails and the haze and all that, and all of a sudden you hit puffy white clouds and blue sky. There's a little closer view of it. Yeah. You can build your own. We'll be talking about that.
Tomorrow you're talking, right?
Not about this, but I'll have DVDs and videos out on this stuff. But you can make your own. You can do it with pyramids. You just need to understand how it works. Okay? So thank you very much.
Yeah. We're going to have panel with Sean David Morton and Dr. Fudge in 10 minutes. And Gail Tackley is doing a workshop at the end workshop room. After the exhibit hall, there's a room. So she's there if you want to join her